I looked at her face on that screen, and I thought God had finally answered my prayers. Those were the words of a 72-year-old man, a man who had spent decades building a quiet, honorable life, a man who had served his community, a man who had buried everyone he ever loved. And now, because of a stranger he met through a glowing screen, he was about to lose the only thing he had left, his home. What you're about to hear isn't just a story about money. It isn't just a story about technology. And it isn't a story about stupidity, because this man was not stupid. This is a story about loneliness, about trust, about what happens when someone who has everything to give meets someone who has everything to take. By the time you finish watching this video, you will understand exactly how modern romance scams work. You will understand the psychology, the manipulation, the careful, patient architecture of deception, and you may recognize something in this story that will stop you or someone you love from becoming the next victim. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, now is the moment. The story I'm about to share will change the way you think about trust forever. And if you're not subscribed, this video might be the last warning you ever see. Hit that button. Do it now, because the information in this video could save everything you've worked your entire life to build. His name doesn't matter, but for the purpose of this story, we'll call him Harold. Harold was 72 years old when his life changed forever. He lived in a small, sun-faded house in the southern United States, a house he had owned outright for nearly 15 years. It wasn't much. 3 bedrooms, a small backyard with a lemon tree he'd planted with his late wife, a garage filled with tools he rarely used anymore. But it was his. Harold had served in the military when he was young. After his service, he worked as an electrician for 31 years. He married once, a woman named Elaine who had passed away from cancer 8 years before the story begins. They never had children. After Elaine died, Harold's world got smaller. His parents were gone. His 2 brothers had passed, one from a heart attack, the other from a stroke. He had cousins somewhere, but they drifted apart decades ago. The phone rarely rang anymore. So Harold filled his days with routine. He woke early. He made coffee. He watched the morning news. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, he volunteered at a food bank run by his local church. On Sundays, he attended Mass, sitting in the same pew, in the same corner, saying the same prayers he'd said for 60 years. And every night, he went home to the same quiet walls. When you're really alone, Harold would later say, all you have are those walls. You talk to them. You ask them questions. And they never answer back. Harold wasn't depressed. He wasn't fragile. He was simply a man who had lived long enough to outlive everyone who had ever known him as something other than the old man who volunteers at the church. He wanted companionship, not necessarily romance, although he wasn't opposed to it. He just wanted someone to share a meal with, someone to call in the afternoon, someone to ask, "How was your day?" And so, one cold February evening, when a notification appeared on his tablet, Harold opened it. The profile picture showed a woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked auburn hair. She looked to be in her mid-60s, professional, put together, approachable. Her name was listed as Margaret N. Sinclair. According to her profile, Margaret was an interior decorator based out of the Midwest. She had a small business. She traveled occasionally for work. She described herself as a widow who had learned to find beauty in new beginnings. Harold didn't know why she'd sent him a friend request. He didn't recognize her. They had no mutual connections. And he rarely used social media for anything other than sharing pictures of his lemon tree and commenting beautiful on photos of his church friends' grandchildren. But something about her profile felt familiar, warm, safe, so he accepted the request. Within an hour, a message appeared. "Hello, Harold. Thank you for accepting. I hope this isn't too forward, but I notice you live in the South. I've always thought about moving somewhere warmer. Do you enjoy it there?" It was simple, polite, ordinary. Harold typed back, "Yes, the weather is nice most of the year. Where are you located?" "Indiana," she replied. "It gets cold here. Too cold for these old bones." And just like that, they were talking. Now, I want you to notice something. There was no red flag in that first message. No mention of money. No urgency. No suspicious links. Margaret didn't ask Harold to invest in anything. She didn't claim to be a model stranded overseas. She didn't say she was a soldier who needed help. She just talked, and that's exactly what made her dangerous. Because most people are trained to look for the obvious signs of scam. The broken English, the wild stories, the too-good-to-be-true photographs. But modern romance scammers have evolved. They know how to be patient. They know how to be boring. And they know that trust is built not through excitement, but through consistency. Over the next several weeks, Harold and Margaret exchanged messages every single day. She told him about her work, how she'd once redesigned the lobby of a boutique hotel in Chicago, how she loved warm color palettes and natural textures, how her late husband had been an accountant who died suddenly from a brain aneurysm 5 years ago. She asked about Harold's life with genuine curiosity. What was the military like? Did he miss his wife? What did he plant in his garden? Did he have any pets? She remembered things, small details. If Harold mentioned he'd had a headache the day before, Margaret would ask about it the next morning. If he said he was nervous about his upcoming doctor's appointment, she'd follow up afterward. "I prayed for you," she'd say. "I hope everything went well." Harold started to look forward to her messages. He would check his phone first thing in the morning, and there it would be. "Good morning, Harold. I hope you slept well. I was just thinking about you and wanted to say I'm grateful you're in my life." For a man who had spent years speaking only to walls, this felt like a miracle. After about a month, Margaret suggested something new. "Harold, I'd love to hear your voice. Would you ever want to talk on the phone? Or maybe even video chat?" Harold hesitated. He wasn't comfortable with technology, but he agreed. The first call was audio only. Margaret apologized, said her camera wasn't working. Her voice was soft, a little husky. She had a slight accent that Harold couldn't quite place, but she said she'd grown up in different parts of the country. They talked for an hour. She laughed at his jokes. She shared memories of her childhood. She asked about Elaine, and Harold found himself tearing up as he described their last years together. "You're a beautiful soul, Harold," Margaret said before hanging up. "Elaine was lucky to have you." A few days later, the video call finally happened, and there she was, Margaret and Sinclair, moving, speaking, smiling, looking exactly like her profile pictures. She wore a pale blue sweater. She was sitting in what looked like a cozy home office, bookshelves behind her. "Hello, Harold," she said. "It's me, Margaret. I've been waiting to see your face." Harold felt his heart lift. He didn't know, he couldn't have known, that the woman on his screen wasn't real. What Harold was looking at was an AI-generated deepfake. A synthetic face mapped onto recorded footage, a voice cloned from publicly available audio samples, and processed through adaptive software that could respond in real time. The technology had advanced far beyond what most people, especially those in Harold's generation, even knew existed. To Harold, she was simply Margaret, the woman he was falling in love with. Right now, someone watching this video is thinking, "This could never happen to me." And I want you to pause on that thought, because the man in this story thought the same thing. He wasn't careless. He wasn't foolish. He was targeted specifically because of how careful he was. If you think you're immune, that's exactly what makes you vulnerable. Subscribe to this channel. Watch every video. Learn the patterns. Because these scammers are studying you, even if you don't know it yet. 11 weeks into their relationship, Margaret told Harold some exciting news. A design firm based in Australia had reached out to her. They were working on a major hotel renovation project in Sydney, a luxury property that needed a complete interior overhaul. They wanted Margaret to lead the project. It was the opportunity of a lifetime. The contract, she said, was worth $1.2 million. Harold was thrilled for her. He congratulated her. He asked her questions. He told her she deserved the success. But then her tone changed. "Harold, I have a problem, and I don't know who else to turn to." The Australian firm, she explained, required specific documentation before they could issue a work visa. There were legal fees, processing fees, expedited handling charges. The total came to just over $9,000. Margaret said she didn't have access to that kind of money right now. Her late husband's estate had been tied up in legal complications. Her savings were invested in her business. She was liquid poor, but contract rich. Once I get paid for this project, I'll have more money than I've ever seen in my life. But right now I'm stuck. I don't know what to do. Harold hesitated. $9,000 was a lot of money, but he thought about everything Margaret had given him. The companionship, the kindness, the good morning text that made him feel, for the first time in years, that someone cared whether he woke up at all. He had a home equity line of credit, a fund he kept for emergencies. He'd never touched it. "How much do you need right now?" he typed. "If you could help with even $5,000, I would be so grateful. I will pay you back the moment my contract payment comes through. I promise, Harold. I would never ask this if I had any other option." Harold went to his bank the next day. He withdrew $5,000 in cash and wired it to an account Margaret provided. She was overwhelmed with gratitude. "You have no idea what this means to me. I will never forget your generosity. I love you, Harold. I truly, truly love you." Let me stop here and explain something important. Harold was not a reckless man. He didn't send that money on a whim. In his mind, he evaluated the situation logically. He had spent nearly 3 months getting to know Margaret. He had spoken to her on the phone. He had seen her face on video. She had shared personal details, vulnerabilities, memories. This wasn't a stranger asking for money. This was someone he cared about, someone who had invested time and emotion in him. And that distinction is exactly what scammers rely on. Modern romance scams are not designed to trick you into trusting someone you've never met. They're designed to make you believe you've met someone worth trusting. By the time money enters a conversation, the victim has already made an emotional decision. The financial decision simply follows. Harold wasn't fooled by a lie. He was fooled by a relationship. And that's a much harder thing to recognize. 2 weeks after the first transfer, Margaret called Harold in tears. The initial $5,000 wasn't enough. The processing fees had increased. There were complications with her visa paperwork. The Australian firm was getting impatient. If she didn't come up with the full amount soon, they would cancel her contract and offer it to someone else. She needed another $25,000. Harold's stomach dropped. He had never spent that much money on anything except his house. His truck was 12 years old. He bought his clothes at thrift stores. He lived carefully, responsibly, within his means. "Margaret, I don't know if I can do that. That's almost everything I have." "I understand," she said, her voice cracking. "I would never pressure you. I don't know what I'm going to do. This was supposed to be my new beginning, and now it might all fall apart." She paused. "I love you, Harold. Whatever you decide, I'll understand." Harold didn't sleep that night. He sat in his kitchen, staring at the numbers on his bank statement. $25,000. His emergency fund, his safety net, the money he had set aside in case something went wrong. But Margaret was real. He had seen her, talked to her. She had promised to pay him back once her contract came through. She was going to make over $1 million. This was temporary. And besides, what was the point of having money if he had no one to share his life with? The next morning, Harold wired the money. But this time, Margaret didn't ask for a traditional bank transfer. She said the Australian firm had changed their payment processing. She needed him to send the funds through a cryptocurrency exchange. She would send him a QR code that he could scan at a Bitcoin ATM. Harold had never used cryptocurrency before. He didn't really understand how it worked. But Margaret walked him through it step by step. She was patient, encouraging, grateful. When the transfer was complete, she thanked him profusely. "This is the last time, Harold. I promise. Once I'm in Sydney and the project begins, everything will be different. We'll finally meet in person. We'll start our life together." Harold held on to those words. He had now sent $47,000 to a woman he had never met in person, and he still believed every word she said. 2 weeks passed. Margaret's messages became sporadic. She apologized, said the transition to Australia was chaotic. Long flights, time zone differences. Meetings that stretched late into the night. Harold understood. He was patient. But then the messages stopped entirely. 1 day passed. Then 2. Then 5. Harold sent message after message. Margaret, is everything okay? I'm worried about you. Please, just let me know you're safe. No response. He tried calling. The number was disconnected. He tried video calling. The connection never went through. He tried searching for her on social media and found nothing. Her profile was gone, wiped clean, as if she had never existed. Harold sat in his kitchen, staring at his phone, a cold realization slowly settling over him like ice water. He had been used. Everything, the messages, the calls, the video chats, the tears, the promises, had been a lie. Margaret and Sinclair wasn't real. She had never been real. And now, $47,000 of Harold's life savings were gone. Harold didn't tell anyone at first. He was too ashamed. How could he explain that he, a grown man, a veteran, someone who had survived real hardship, had fallen for something so foolish? He replayed every conversation in his mind, searching for the moments he should have seen through the deception. The way she never initiated the video calls at unexpected times. The way she always had a reason not to meet in person. The way the money requests came gradually, each one slightly larger than the last. It had all been there. He just hadn't wanted to see it. After 3 sleepless weeks, Harold finally contacted local law enforcement. He sat across from a detective and handed over dozens of screenshots. Every message, every photo, every transaction record. The detective listened patiently, taking notes. A few days later, Harold received a call. The investigators had traced the account activity. The money had moved through a series of international transfers before landing in an account that appeared to be linked to a network operating out of West Africa. Margaret, whoever had been behind that name, was likely part of a professional scam syndicate, a team of people working in shifts, managing multiple relationships at once, using sophisticated tools to manipulate victims around the world. Harold was not their only target. He was one of hundreds. The scammers who targeted Harold are watching content just like this, studying how people react, learning what works, refining their tactics. They evolve faster than most people realize. If you want to stay ahead of them, you need to stay informed. Subscribe. Not later. Not tomorrow. Now. Because tomorrow, someone you love might get a message from a stranger who seems too good to be true. And they won't know what you know unless you share this video with them. The weeks that followed were the hardest of Harold's life. He stopped volunteering at the food bank. He stopped attending Mass. He stopped calling the few acquaintances he had left. He sat in his empty house, surrounded by the same walls that had kept him company for years. Except now those walls felt different. They felt like a prison. Harold had spent $47,000 he couldn't afford to lose. His home equity line was maxed out. The monthly payments were now due, and he was barely able to cover them on his fixed income. If something didn't change, he would lose the house, the only thing he had left. But what haunted Harold even more than the money was the shame. He couldn't stop thinking about how easily he had been manipulated, how desperately he had wanted to believe. I trusted my own judgment, he would later say, and it let me down. He had trouble sleeping. He lost weight. He stopped answering the phone, afraid that every call might be another lie, another deception, another person who wasn't who they claimed to be. He began to wonder if he would ever be able to trust anyone again. Looking back, Harold identified several moments where things could have gone differently. The first was a video call. Harold believed that seeing Margaret's face on video proved she was real. But in the age of deepfake technology and AI-generated avatars, video is no longer proof of identity. If someone refuses to meet in person, especially after months of communication, that refusal should be taken seriously. The second was the framing of the money request. Margaret never asked Harold to give her money. She asked him to help her, to support her, to believe in her. That distinction mattered. Scammers understand that people are more willing to spend money when they feel like they're solving a problem, not funding a stranger. By positioning herself as temporarily stuck, Margaret made Harold feel like a rescuer, not a victim. The third was the escalation pattern. The first request was $5,000. The second was $25,000. Each request was larger, but by the time the second one came, Harold had already invested emotionally and financially. Walking away would have meant admitting the first payment was a mistake. This is called the sunk cost fallacy, and scammers exploit it ruthlessly. The fourth was the payment method. The shift from bank transfer to cryptocurrency should have been a warning sign. Crypto transactions are nearly impossible to trace or reverse. Scammers only request them once they're confident the victim is fully committed. If someone you've never met asks you to pay them through cryptocurrency, gift cards, or wire transfers, stop. These are not normal payment methods for legitimate relationships. Harold eventually agreed to share his story, not because he wanted sympathy, but because he wanted to prevent this from happening to someone else. "I'm not special," he said. "I'm not unusually gullible. I'm just a person who wanted to be loved, and somebody used that against me." He paused. "If you're watching this and you think it could never happen to you, that's exactly what I thought too." Here's what Harold, and everyone watching, needs to understand. Modern romance scams are not about intelligence. They are about isolation, vulnerability, the deep, universal human need for connection. These scammers are professionals. They study psychology. They run A/B tests on their messages. They track what works and what doesn't. They keep detailed notes on their targets, remembering birthdays, health issues, family situations, because they know that personalized attention builds trust faster than anything else. And they are patient. They will spend months, sometimes years, building a relationship before they ever ask for a single dollar. By the time the request comes, it doesn't feel like a scam. It feels like helping someone you love. There's a reason you're still watching this video. Maybe it's because you recognize something in Harold's story that reminded you of yourself or someone you care about. That instinct matters. Listen to it and do something about it. Subscribe. Share this video with the people in your life who need to hear it. Because right now, while you're watching this, someone has fallen for the exact same trap Harold did, and they don't even know it yet. Before we end, let's review the warning signs that could save your life or the life of someone you love. 1. They refuse to meet in person. No matter how elaborate the excuses, work commitments, visa issues, hospital emergencies, if someone cannot meet you face-to-face after months of communication, that is a red flag. 2. They ask for money, especially through untraceable methods. Cryptocurrency, gift cards, wire transfers, Western Union. If a romantic partner you've never met asks for payment through any of these channels, stop immediately. 3. Their story always involves external obstacles. Scammers create narratives where they are constantly victimized by external circumstances, job problems, legal issues, medical emergencies. This keeps the victim in rescue mode indefinitely. 4. The relationship feels unusually intense. Phrases like, "I've never felt this way before," or "You're the only one who understands me," are designed to create rapid emotional bonding. Real relationships develop gradually. 5. They discourage you from talking to others. If someone you're dating asks you not to tell your friends or family about them, that is a major warning sign. Scammers thrive in secrecy. One final rule. If you're in any kind of relationship, online or otherwise, and you feel like something is wrong, talk to someone you trust before you take action. Scammers rely on silence. They rely on shame. They rely on the fact that victims often don't speak up until it's too late. Don't let them win. Harold's story doesn't have a happy ending. As of the time this story was reported, he was still struggling to make his mortgage payments. He still had trouble sleeping. He still carried the weight of knowing that the woman he loved never existed. But Harold did something brave. He spoke up. He shared his story, not because it made him look good, but because he hoped it might save someone else. And that's why I'm asking you to do something right now. Think about the people in your life. Your parents, your grandparents, your neighbors, your coworkers. Are any of them isolated? Are any of them lonely? Are any of them spending more time online than usual, talking to someone they've never mentioned before? If so, check on them. Start a conversation. Let them know that they can talk to you, without judgment, because the best protection against scams isn't technology, it's community. Harold wanted me to leave you with one final thought. Any relationship that requires secrecy, urgency, or money before you've met in person isn't a relationship. It's a trap. Remember that. Share this video. And stay safe. If this story affected you, if it made you think, made you feel, made you realize something you hadn't considered before, then you already know what to do. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and come back for the next story, because there are many more like Harold's out there. Scammers are counting on you to scroll past, forget, and move on. Prove them wrong. Hit subscribe. And if you choose not to, I want you to scroll down to comments right now and tell me why. Tell me what's holding you back. Because maybe, just maybe, you're exactly the person who needs to hear the next story the most.